Hello everybody, this is Funk McLovin. I'm going to teach you more about what I've learned about Gnosticism, and also opine about what I've discovered and how it can relate to you. By the end of this video, you will understand what this is. You don't know what it is now, because it's only in my brain, but you will know what it is, and you might recognize it if you are have already looked into Gnosticism. Previously, on my last video, Gnosticism Explained, Part 1, I talked about the lineage of the aeons, the 30 aeons in the Valentinian tradition. I talked about the dispensationalism of Yaldabaoth. I talked about the three paths and how to look out for the three deaths. And of course, I talked about the tripartite self. Most of this came from knowledge from the Tripartite Tractate, which is a Valentinian Gnostic text that was recovered in Nag Hammadi. It was a very informative video in that it had a lot of information that was objective to Gnosticism, but this video is going to get more into speculation and extrapolation on what we know. Here's the cosmology of Gnosticism in the Valentinian tradition. This is not a literalistic cosmology, it's just this is how the world is purported to work if Valentinian sources are true. Monad creates the aeons. That was discussed in the previous video. The aeons create each other in a lineage. That was also discussed in the previous video. The youngest aeon, Sophia, makes Yaldabaoth by mistake. That was talked about in the previous video slightly. Yaldabaoth rules over the earth and over the archons. Yaldabaoth and the archons were discussed in the last video, but not extensively. And then finally is number 5, Setanael's rebellion, which is a very broad topic that I didn't discuss yet. But Setanael's rebellion is the kind of last component to the cosmology. I made a chart. On the left you see the monad, and makes the aeons, and makes Sophia, and makes the archons and Yaldabaoth, who makes humanity, and also Setanael's fallen angels. Setanael is Satan from classical Christian mythology, but a little different. The Aeonic hierarchy was discussed in my previous video, so go watch that if you haven't watched this yet. The ruler is the monad. Their number is 30. In other words, there are 30 of them. Their lineage was previously discussed, and the sources for their information are the Tripartite Tractate and the writings of Irenaeus. This is during the 1st and 2nd centuries. Their main aspect is pneumatic. In other words, they are pneumatic beings. Here's the hierarchy of the archons. Their ruler is Yaldabaoth, otherwise known as Yahweh, otherwise known as God. Their number is 9 choirs in 3 tiers. Their lineage is, at the bottom are the angels, next come the archangels, then the principalities, then the powers, then the virtues, then the dominions, then the thrones, the cherubim, and the seraphim. If you're familiar with Christianity, especially evangelical Christianity, you're probably familiar with these choirs of angels. The sources for these are the Old Testament, a writer named Pseudo-Dionysius, and of course, Thomas Aquinas. Their main aspect is hylic, or worldly. Here's the archon hierarchy. There are 3 orders of angels, each with an aspect. The angels, archangels, and principalities are hylic, the powers, virtues, and dominions are psychic, and the thrones, cherubim, and seraphim are pneumatic. In other words, they are given hylic, psychic, and pneumatic in that all they can be. The function of the archons are to be subordinate to Yaldabaoth. It is unknown whether they are created by Yaldabaoth or dominated. In some traditions, they are created by Yaldabaoth, and in the Valentinian tradition, in the Tripartite Tractate, it is only said that the archons dominated one another. They control the material world, the world we live in, the cosmos, the kosmon and in the Greek. They are liaisons between humans and Yaldabaoth, and they are a material reflection of the aeons. In other words, they are Sophia's attempt to reflect the aeons. They're not evil. If you were a Sethian or if you were a Manichaean, you would believe that the archons were evil or of darkness. That is not so. They aren't good, but they're not evil. Next, we'll talk about demons, or daimons. Their ruler is Setanael, pictured here as Satan. Their number is 666 legions, or 1/3 of all the archons. This is from the Pseudomonarchia Daemonium. Their lineage is the same as the archons. In other words, they are they're 9 choirs in 3 sections. The sources for the daemon hierarchy are from the Book of Enoch as well as the Pauline Gospels. The function of the daimons are to defect from the archons. Setanael defects from Yaldabaoth. For what reason? That's another video. They are contacted by Sophia, and they give humans the gift of knowledge, the tree of good and evil, the fruit of the tree of good and evil. This is depicted in Genesis. The daimons, or demons, are refuted in Creedal Christianity. They are seen as evil, and they are one half of the dualistic Christian morality system. And that is obviously flawed. To anyone who was Christian, you can kind of understand what I'm saying here. I'm going to get into more of Setanael's lore in later videos, but for now, this is the function of the daimons, to be rebels. So angel and demon are unclear words in Christianity. Demon can refer both to fallen angels, such as Satan, or alien deities like Baal. Angel refers to different things as well in the Old Testament and New Testament. Demons lead humans to sin in the Old and New Testaments, but Satan, as he exists in popular culture, does not exist as he does in the Bible. Ha-Satan is one of God's angels in the Old Testament. Look in the book of Job. I have a sermon on my Patreon about the book of Job that is for free. A lot of my sermons are available on Patreon, so you can look at that if you want. Ha-Satan is different than Setanael. Basically, you have the accounts in Genesis versus Job versus the New Testament. It's all a little bit tangled up, is what I'm saying. In Creedal Christianity, all this stuff is vague, but this is going to straighten all of that out. So here's some definitions of words we're going to use going forward. Pneumatic is of the spirit, psychic is of the mind, hylic is of the world. I'm going to say the word aeonic, which means kind of ineffable, general, universal. The word archonic, you can understand to mean orderly, organized, natural. And demonic means rebellious, chaotic, and revolutionary. This could mean nothing. There's a lot of references to things that are hylic and pneumatic in the original Bible, as well as the Gospel of Thomas. The idea in the Gospel of Thomas passage that I've outlined here is, if the flesh became into being because of the spirit, it is a wonder. In other words, if spirit caused flesh to occur, that is a wonder. But if spirit came into being because of the body, it is a wonder of wonders. Indeed, I am amazed at how this great wealth has been made home in this poverty. What Jesus is saying here in the Gospel of Thomas, saying number 29, is essentially that spirit comes forth from the body. In other words, the body comes before the spirit. This is one of the central Valentinian beliefs, and it is one of the central ideas behind the phases, which I'm going to talk about momentarily. In other words, it is saying that flesh and spirit exist in a continuum. The hylic and the pneumatic are deeply intertwined, and you have to make use of the hylic body to get to the spirit. The body comes before the spirit. Next, we have the Gospel of John, which is a canonical text, chapter 17, verse 14. I have given them your word, and the world has hated them, for they are not of the world any more than I am of the world. There are certain Greek words that correspond to the words that I've bolded. The word logon, or logos, is a pneumatic word. It is a word that I discussed in my previous video on the aeons. The word cosmos is a hylic word. In other words, it is a worldly term. Humans are not of the world. They are not of the kenoma, and they have to break free. However, humans come in many shapes and sizes, and so the way that they break through the world, the way that, like Jesus said, we have to overcome the world, is to gain access to their own beings. How do you gain access to your own being? Well, the phases. Here we have 9 different phases. They are combinations of the 3 types of beings. the aeons, the archons, and the daimons, and they are a combination of the personal, the communal, and the universal. The personal concerns yourself, the communal concerns the totality of beings, and the universal is objective and totalizing reality. God is the universal aeon, the Demiurge is the communal archon, and Setanael is the personal daimon. What this means is going to become clearer in a moment, so just bear with me. All of the different beings that we've discussed in the previous videos and this video have a phase. In other words, they exist at a combination of the universal, communal, and personal, as well as the aeonic, archonic, and daemonic. So Setanael in the bottom right is the personal daimon. However, the fallen psychic archons have a communal daimonic nature. Again, this doesn't make the most sense. Let's move into this making sense. The universal ion is the monad, the universal archon is the cosmos, and the universal daimon is truth. These words are meant to elicit some kind of emotion in you, some kind of association. They are meant to be little nodes for you to kind of grab onto, to increase your understanding. The communal ion is the egregore, the communal archon is the superego, and the communal daemon is critique, the idea of critiquing something. The personal aeon is knowledge, the personal archon is the self, and the personal daimon is the id. So, again, this is all very vague, and it's very vague intentionally. These are not meant to be definitional things. I'm going to get into the definitional stuff in a moment, but there is a reason that I am teaching you first the kind of vibes-based stuff. I want you to feel this out before I give you an actual definition for all of these things. All of the phases are first and foremost based on feelings, emotions, and intuitions. You might not even know all the words that I've said here. These are kind of just general psychological terms, like the id, self, superego, that's Freudian. Egregore is based on like ideas and thought forms. Critique is based on, literary critique, etc. These are all psychological or philosophical terms. Next, let's move on to the actual names of the phases, which are going to give you a better idea of everything. Essence, radiance, chaos, ritual, choir, coven, faith, guidance, and passion. These are the 9 ways to interface with yourself and the world around you. These are the internal feelings. These are the internal drives, the internal emotions, intuitions, and understandings that we must come to get gnosis. I've made some symbols here. These are of my own creation. I don't know. I think they're pretty cool. They all symbolize different things. I'm not going to get into that. First, I'm going to talk about the essence phase. This is a pneumatic and aeonic phase. It is associated with the monad. Its symbol is a circle. It's just a circle. It's totality. It has no angles. It has no edges. It is everything. Universality, essential nature, the Godhead, infinity. The numbers associated with essence are infinity. They have all genders. The planet is the sun, and the chord is 1. The idea of essence is essentially what is beyond even truth. What is something that is so totalizing that it is infinite? It's kind of hard to get your head around this, and if you're aware of the idea of like the Platonic world of forms, you're very familiar with what essence is. Next, we have radiance. Radiance is pneumatic and archonic. It is associated with the cosmos, or the world, or the universe. It is beauty, nature, light, magnificence, and feelings of awe. It is looking out upon the stars. It is looking down into the Grand Canyon. It is feeling that you are a mere tiny little speck in this beautiful, beautiful, huge world. The numbers are millions, billions, trillions. They are large numbers. The gender is androgyne, and the planet is Jupiter, and the chord is 5. Next, we have chaos, which is pneumatic and demonic. It is associated with mystery and truth. It is the continuum of mystery and actual truth. It's associated with darkness, uncertainty, excitement, intrigue, and fear. The 2 previous phases that we've discussed are things that are known. And chaos is the unknown. It is what we are not yet aware of. It is something scary. It is something strange. It is alien. It is odd. The numbers are negatives. The gender is androgyne. The planet is Saturn. And the chord is 4. Next we have the phase ritual. This is a communal aeonic phase. It is associated with the idea of egregores and thought forms. This is society, belief, the collective unconscious, connection, sociology. Ritual is the idea of your rituals and your beliefs forming something larger in society. Think of the Catholic Church. Think of America. These are things that do not exist necessarily in the real world, but have come to exist because humans believe in them. They are the rituals that we perpetrate every day. You can think of the idea of money, of countries, of your place of employment perhaps. They are something with a thought form component. The numbers are prime, they are indivisible, the gender is male, the planet is Venus, and the chord is 3. Next we have the choir. This is communal and archonic, and associated with the Demiurge. Participation, engagement, obedience, and kinship. If you've ever sung in a choir, you understand what I mean by choir. It is something that you participate in a rigid fashion. It is something that expects something of you. If you're singing in a choir and you start doing jazz scat when you are singing a gospel hymn, that is going to be inappropriate. And a choir is something that you are participating harmoniously within. This is the side of society that expects something from you. It is something that is rigid. And it can give you pleasure, but it can also be stifling. The numbers are the evens. They are divisible and neat. The gender is male, the planet is Mercury, and the chord is 2. Next we have coven, the phase of coven. This is communal and demonic. It is associated with critique and rebellion. The ideas herein are counterculture, contrarianism, coalition, and rebellion. The coven is what you require when society is too rigid. This is the idea of rebellion in its simplest form. This is the idea of fighting against something that is unjust, something that is bigger than you and is trying to control you in a way that you don't like. It is trying to take back control from something larger. It is the idea of critique, of criticizing, of being a contrarian, of not liking the order. The numbers are odds because they are indivisible and not neat. The gender is female, the planet is Mars, and the chord is the diminished 7th. Next we have the faith phase. It is a personal aeonic phase. It's associated with belief, things like belief, trust, intuition, understanding, and conviction. These are things that you believe to be true and act upon as such. Every human being has things they have faith in. Perhaps it is God, perhaps it is science, perhaps it is something as simple as their car starting in the morning so they can get to work. They believe things, and their actions day to day are dictated by these beliefs. The numbers are integers, they are reliable and unitary. The gender is female, the planet is Uranus, and the chord is the -6. Next we have guidance. This is a personal archonic phase. It is associated with the self, the you. It has knowledge, understanding, discovery, and teaching. The idea of guidance as a phase is the idea of what do you want, who are you, and how can you get it. It is something that requires you to participate in the world as a objective thing. It is requiring you to say, I want to buy a PS5. I don't have any money. I need to get a job to get money to get a PS5. Again, like other archonic phases, it expects something out of you. It can also bring you to higher knowledge, understanding, discovery, and it can teach you things. This is the knowledge that other people already know. For instance, someone right now is teaching me art, and even though art is very creative, I have to get guidance before I can get good at expressing my art. Guidance is something that is very beautiful. Guidance is also associated with your idea of the self. When you look in the mirror and you name yourself, when you boil yourself down to these central components, you are somebody. And when you are somebody, there are certain behaviors that you want and don't want to do. For instance, you could go into your job tomorrow and start screaming and shitting on the floor. However, this would not be in line with yourself. It might be in line with yourself. I doubt it, though. So this is the self that expects upkeep. It expects maintenance. It expects you to act in a way that is uniform with yourself. The numbers are fractions and decimals because they are very complex and precise. Gender is female, the planet is Neptune, and the chord is the major 6. Next we have ego. This is the final phase. It is a personal and demonic phase. It is associated with Setanael. It is your needs, your desires, your wants, your willpower, your determination. Essentially, you, your being, your subconscious, your conscious, your unitary thing. This is something that challenges the self, but it is something that is fundamentally you. In other words, you may want to go into your job and shit on the floor, but you're not going to. Your ego wants this, but your self does not want this. This is the wellspring from everything that comes out of you. It is your irrational body saying, I want to eat, I want to have sex, I want to sleep. And it is essentially the indivisible portion of yourself. It is irrational, it is indivisible, it is invisible, it is your subconscious and conscious as a unit. And it can also drive a lot of rebellious feelings. Like society wants you to get into certain boxes, and your ego might fight against those boxes. The numbers are irrational and imaginary because they are irrational and imaginary. The gender is male, the planet is Earth, and the chord is the 1. So, let's summarize here. I've just talked about all the phases, about all the associated properties, etc., etc. But I want to get back to the actual beings that we're talking about here, the actual mythology. The monad, the Yaldabaoth, and Setanael. These are the 3 main archetypes. The monad is the sacred god and the prime mover. Yaldabaoth is the worldly god, the supreme being over this flawed existence. It is objectivity. And then Setanael is the king of rebels, the advocate for humanity. These are the 3 archetypes that I want you to really think about. When I'm going away from here, I want you to think about which archetype you most relate to. Now we're going to talk about the main themes of this, the reason that we're talking about this at all. The material world is flawed, but it is objective. The material world has powerful rulers, and it is good when humans rebel against these rules. However, it is also good when humans adhere to these rules because it can get them material wealth. The events and actions in the world can be defined with their relation to this mythology that I've outlined, and the 9 aspects or phases are a lens with which to analyze the world and yourself. Which aspect do you most relate to? Which phase do you most relate to? Which phase most aligns with your own goals? And which phase can help you the most? The phases are fundamental desires. We have these concepts again. Aeonic is a desire for spirituality. Archonic is the desire to be obedient. Daemonic is the desire to be rebellious. We have Hylic, which is a worldly desire. They want material wealth. Psychic is the desire for knowledge. And Pneumatic is the desire for gnosis. Here's some examples of phases of desires. The desire to be famous is a communal demonic phase. Desire to learn a trade is communal and archonic because it is worldly, but it is also something you need to take on as a communal knowledge. The desire to cure cancer is universal and demonic because cancer is something that arises from the natural world, and so you're fighting against that. You're demonic, and it is also universal because it would benefit, the entire world. It would be a complete change of paradigm. The desire to be comfortable is personal and demonic. It is your own personal desire for comfort. The desire for knowledge is universal and archonic. It is the desire to know more things about the natural world. The natural world is archonic, and knowledge is universal. And the desire to eat a hot dog, much like the desire to be comfortable, is personal and demonic. This could mean nothing. The reason that I'm making this video is not to give you any sort of guidance, but to give you a tool. And this tool is going to be used by me in my future videos. So I might recommend this video to people later to understand what I'm talking about when I'm talking about certain concepts. And all I really want to do is create a kind of literary analysis with which we can look at other works of fiction from a Gnostic lens. So the project here is essentially Gnostic literary critique. So when I say this could mean nothing, that's what I mean. This is something that is only going to be as meaningful as you put into it. You're going to get out what you put in. But I have used this in my personal life. I've used this in my personal analysis, and I'm going to go on to in many videos to talk about it in greater detail. So I think as time goes by and I show people the utility of this, they will come to understand it. And I'm ending this video on a quote. I think it was Diogenes who said this, or maybe it was Abraham Lincoln, or maybe it was Setanael himself. They don't think it be like it is, but it do. The ending of the words is Nothi ton logan. Also subscribe to my Patreon.